Seoul had learned to live with gates. The skyline carried them like scars. Red portals hung between skicky scrapers. Blue ones shimmered over subway stations, and the occasional black gate warranted evacuation protocols that lasted days. The city moved around them. Traffic rerouted. Markets adjusted. Life continued because it had to. This one was different. The gate opened at 14:22 on a Thursday afternoon, 3 blocks from Gangnam Station. No alarms, no mana surge. The detection grid didn't register it until a pedestrian called the emergency services to report a hole in the air that made her phone lose signal. By 14:30, the Hunter Association had cordoned off 6 square blocks. Go Gun-hee arrived 17 minutes later. His car slid through the police barrier while officers waved civilians back with the practiced efficiency of people who'd done this 100 times before. The chairman stepped onto pavement, still warm from midday sun, and looked up at the gate. It hung there, silent, motionless, red like the others. But where a typical red gate pulsed with hostile intent, this one simply existed. No energy rippled across its surface. No monsters had emerged. The portal opened onto what looked like an empty corridor, edge's stable interior visible. "Readings, Go Gun?" he asked. The technician beside the mobile command unit didn't look up from her tablet. "That's the problem, sir. We're not getting readings." "Elaborate." "Mana detectors are registering null values, not 0. Null, like the sensors can't decide what they're looking at." She tapped her screen. Numbers flickered, reorganized themselves, flickered again. Temperature scans are inconclusive. Spatial analysis keeps timing out. It's like the gate is... What? The technician hesitated. "Our tools don't have an answer for it, sir. Go." Gun-hee watched the gate for 3 seconds. Then, he turned to the association captain coordinating the perimeter. "Status on civilians, Eastern sector's clear. We're moving the last group now. Media's already circling, but we've got the airspace locked down. Keep it that way. I want this labeled as a structural emergency until we know what we're dealing with. Sir, if this goes active, then we'll have evacuated the area and won't need to explain why." Go Gun-hee looked back at the gate. "How many hunters on site?" 12A rank, 23B rank. S rank Min Byung-gu is en route. Tell him to hold at the secondary perimeter until I give clearance." The captain hesitated. "Sir, protocol for unidentified red gates?" "I'm aware of protocol. I'm also aware that protocol assumes the gate behaves according to known parameters." Go Gun-hee gestured at the portal. "Does that look like known parameters to you?" The captain said nothing. "Go." Gun-hee moved closer. The gate's surface showed no distortion. Through the opening, he could see the corridor clearly. Walls that might have been concrete or might have been something else. Floor that reflected nothing. No shadows. No depth markers to give the space dimension. And at the far end, barely visible, a figure, upright, motionless, like someone who had nowhere else to be. "Get me a drone," Go Gun-hee said. The command unit launched it within 90 seconds. The small aircraft hummed across the cordoned street camera feed, streaming to the monitors. It approached the gate at walking speed, rotor's steady transmission clear. The moment it crossed the threshold, every screen went white. Not static, not interference. Pure white, like the feed had been overwritten by something the cameras failed to retain. The drone's telemetry continued for another 5 seconds, altitude and velocity data scrolling normally, and then it simply stopped transmitting. "Did we lose it?" Go Gun-hee asked. "No, sir." The technician looked confused. "According to the tracker, it's still active, still inside. We're just not receiving visual. Try thermal." "Already did. Same result." Go Gun-hee watched the white screens. "Send another one." The second drone made it 3 meters past the threshold before its feed blanked. The third didn't even make it that far. Each time the telemetry insisted the device remained functional. Each time the cameras showed nothing but featureless white. "Sir." The technician's voice had gone very quiet. The spatial sensors just came back online. And they're registering the corridor as 0.82 kilometers long. Go-Gun-Hee turned. Say that again. The interior space measures 0.82 kilometers in length. Width is standard corridor dimensions. Height is standard. But the depth... She looked up. Sir, that gate is 12 meters across. The space inside shouldn't physically fit. A cold sensation settled in Go-Gun-Hee's chest. Not fear. He'd been a hunter long enough to recognize fear. This was something else. The feeling of standing at the edge of something that didn't care about the rules everyone else followed. The figure, he said. Is it still there? The technician checked her tablet. Our last visual confirmed a humanoid shape approximately 800 meters from the gate entrance. We haven't been able to get a clear image, but it hasn't moved. No, sir. Go. Gun-Hee pulled out his phone. He scrolled through contacts, found the one he needed, and made the call. It connected on the second ring. This is Jin Woo. We have a situation in Gangnam. Go-Gun-Hee said. Gate opened an hour ago. No hostile activity, no mana signature we can read, and something inside that our equipment can't properly scan. There was a pause. Then, you want me to look at it? I want you to tell me if it's safe to send a team in. If you're calling me instead of sending the team, you already know it's not safe. Go. Gun-Hee looked at the gate. The figure inside hadn't moved. I need confirmation. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The call ended. Go-Gun-Hee pocketed his phone and turned to the captain. No one enters that gate until Hunter Sung arrives. Anyone asks, tell them we're waiting for structural analysis. And if something comes out, go. Gun-Hee thought about the featureless corridor, the impossible depth, the figure standing motionless in a space that rejected observation. Then we hope it's willing to talk, he said. The afternoon stretched into early evening. The cordon held. News helicopters circled at the enforced distance cameras pointed at the gate reporters, speculating about dungeon classifications and response times. Social media lit up with theories. The Hunter Association's official statement called it a routine investigation. Inside the command unit, the technician kept watching her instruments. The mana readings continued returning null values. Temperature sensors refused to settle on a number. The spatial measurements hadn't changed. 0.82 kilometers, 12-meter opening. Go. Gun-Hee stood near the barrier close enough to see the gate clearly. The corridor inside remained empty, except for that single figure. Unchanged. As if time inside the corridor had stalled. Waiting. The sun touched the horizon. The city's lights began to wake. The gate's red glow deepened against the gathering dark. And somewhere in that impossible space, a student in a school uniform stood perfectly still, as if the world around him held no interest whatsoever. Go-Gun-Hee checked his watch. 17 minutes since the call. He looked back at the gate and wondered what kind of dungeon opened without monsters. What kind of space existed that couldn't be measured? What kind of person occupied an empty corridor without shifting position for over an hour? The answers he suspected were going to redefine what the association thought it knew about gates. His phone buzzed. A text from Jin Woo, arriving now. Go. Gun-Hee straightened. Behind him, the command unit's monitors continued their attempts to make sense of data that never stabilized. Above him, the gate hung in the air like a question no one had thought to ask. And inside, the figure finally moved. Just slightly. A shift of weight. The smallest acknowledgement that something had changed. Go. Gun-Hee's hand went to his phone, but he didn't look away from the gate. Get me a direct line to Hunter Sung, he said. Now. The corridor's light seemed to dim, or maybe it was just the evening settling in. Either way, the figure was clearer now. Definitely a student, young. School uniform recognizable even at this distance, and his eyes just visible in the uncertain light looked directly at the gate's entrance. Directly at Go-Gun-Hee. Not hostile, not afraid. Just tired. The technician's voice cracked across the radio. "Sir, the mana readings just spiked. Not from the gate, from the surrounding area. Every active gate within 2 kilometers just changed classification." Go-Gun-Hee kept his eyes on the student. "Changed how?" "They're all routing here, like something inside is pulling them." The figure in the corridor tilted his head slightly. A gesture that might have been curiosity or recognition. Go-Gun-Hee's phone rang. He answered without looking. "Jin Woo, I'm at the perimeter. What am I looking at?" "Go." Gun-Hee watched the student, watched those tired eyes, watched someone who occupied an impossible space with the patience of a person who'd been waiting a very long time. "I don't know," he said, "but it noticed you." Jin Woo stepped through the perimeter at 1847. The association guards recognized him immediately and moved aside without being asked. He walked past the mobile command unit, past the cluster of hunters standing ready at the secondary line, past the technicians hunched over equipment that clearly wasn't giving them answers they wanted. Go-Gun-Hee met him at the edge of the cordon. "Hunter Sung, Chairman." Jin Woo looked past him at the gate. Red light painted the street in shades of rust and shadow. "How long has it been open?" 4 hours, 31 minutes. No hostile activity, no mana signature we can identify, and a spatial anomaly that makes the interior larger than the exterior by a factor of 68. Jin Woo's expression didn't change. "You sent drones." 3. Visual feeds failed on entry. Telemetry suggests they're still operational, but we can't confirm. "And the person inside?" "Go." Gun-Hee handed him a tablet. The screen showed a frozen image from the last successful drone pass, zoomed and enhanced. A young man in a school uniform, hands in pockets posture, relaxed. His face was visible enough to see he wasn't afraid. "He hasn't moved," Go-Gun-Hee said. "Not in over an hour." And every gate within 2 kilometers started redirecting mana flow toward this location approximately 30 minutes ago. Jin Woo studied the image. The student looked about 17. Dark hair, average height, nothing about him that screamed threat. But Jin Woo had learned a long time ago that danger didn't announce itself with obvious markers. "You think he's causing the distortion?" "I think he's connected to it. Whether he's the source or just standing in the middle of it, I can't tell." Go-Gun-Hee gestured toward the gate. "We need to know what we're dealing with before civilians start asking questions we can't answer." Jin Woo looked at the corridor beyond the portal. Empty walls. Odd lighting. A space that shouldn't exist containing a person who showed no sign of distress. "I'll go in," he said. "Alone. If something goes wrong with a team, I'll have to pull them out. If I go alone, I only have to worry about myself. Go." Gun-Hee was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "Radio check every 2 minutes. If we lose contact, you seal the gate and evacuate the area." "That's not what I was going to say." Jin Woo met his look. "That's what you should say." He turned toward the gate before Go-Gun-Hee could argue. Behind him, the command unit went quiet. Hunters stepped back. Someone whispered something about protocol, but Jin Woo was already moving. The transition was immediate. One moment he was walking through humid Seoul air, the next he was inside a corridor that had no business existing. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. Sound flattened like the space had been built to absorb noise rather than carry it. His footsteps made almost no echo. Jin Woo stopped 3 meters past the threshold and looked back. The gate showed the street outside, perfectly visible, perfectly clear. Go-Gun-Hee watching. The command unit's lights. The city beyond. He turned forward. The corridor stretched ahead, walls featureless and gray floors smooth enough to reflect nothing. No doors, no windows, no features at all except the light that came from everywhere and nowhere at once. And at the far end, exactly where the drone footage had shown him the student. Jin Woo walked. His senses picked up nothing. No mana traces, no hostile intent, no environmental hazards. Just the corridor, the odd light, and the sound of his own breathing. The student didn't react to his approach, didn't turn, didn't shift position. Hands in his pockets, attention elsewhere, looking at nothing in particular. Jin Woo stopped 10 meters away. "Can you understand me?" The student blinked slowly. Then his gaze drifted over to Jin Woo. Not sharp, not focused. The look of someone who'd seen this kind of situation before and found it dull. Yes, his voice was flat. No emotion, no stress. Like Jin Woo had asked him about the weather instead of confronting him in an impossible space. "Do you know where you are?" The student looked around the corridor with the barest hint of curiosity. "Not really. Somewhere that isn't home." "How did you get here?" "I don't know." Jin Woo watched him carefully. No signs of deception, no nervous tells. The kid genuinely seemed unbothered by his situation. "What's your name?" "Yogiri Takatou." "Japanese?" "Yes." Jin Woo processed that. A Japanese student somehow inside a red gate in Seoul that defied every known classification. "Are you injured? Do you need medical attention?" "No, I'm fine." Yogiri's attention drifted back toward the middle distance. "I just want to go home." "Where's home?" "Not here." That wasn't an answer, but Jin Woo let it pass. "Do you know what this place is?" "A hallway." "It's inside a gate, a portal. This isn't normal space." Yogiri looked at the walls, the floor, the ceiling. "Okay." The complete lack of concern was starting to feel deliberate. Jin Woo had seen people in shock before people who responded to trauma with detachment. This wasn't that. This was someone who genuinely didn't care. "Yogiri," Jin Woo said carefully. "There are people outside who want to help you. But first, I need to know if you're responsible for this gate." "I didn't make it, but you're connected to it." Yogiri tilted his head slightly. "Maybe. Things like this happen sometimes." "Things like what?" "Strange places, gates, portals." He said it the way someone might describe a traffic delay. Inconvenient, but not worth getting upset about. Jin Woo took a slow breath. "We're going to get you out of here. But I need you to cooperate. Don't make any sudden moves. Don't try to run. Just walk with me back to the entrance." "I wasn't planning to run." "Good. Then the radio in Jin Woo's ear crackled. "Go." Gunhee's voice came through tight with urgency. "Jin Woo, we have a situation. A-rank team just entered the gate. They didn't wait for clearance." Jin Woo turned toward the entrance. "Who authorized that? No one. They're calling it a safety measure. They think you need backup." Jin Woo swore quietly. He looked back at Yogiri. "Stay here. Don't move." Yogiri just blinked. Jin Woo started back toward the gate at a jog. 30 seconds later, he saw them. 5 A-rank hunters in association gear moving down the corridor in formation. The team leader spotted Jin Woo and raised a hand. "Hunter Sung, we're here to assist with extraction." "I didn't request assistance," Jin Woo said. "You need to leave, now." The team leader glanced past him toward Yogiri. "Sir, protocol for unidentified entities inside anomalous gates. Requires authorization from the chairman. Did you get that authorization?" The hunter hesitated. "We're here to ensure your safety. My safety isn't the issue." Jin Woo lowered his voice. "That kid is cooperating. If you spook him, this situation gets complicated." One of the hunters, a woman with restraint magic already shimmering around her hands, spoke up. "He's just standing there. We can secure him before he becomes a threat." "Don't!" But she was already moving. The team spread out covering angles following training that made perfect sense in any other dungeon. The woman raised her hand, and threads of silver light shot toward Yogiri. "Stop!" Jin Woo started forward. The restraint magic reached Yogiri and wrapped around his wrists. He looked down at the glowing threads with mild confusion. "Please don't do this," he said quietly. The woman tightened the binding. "Containment successful. We'll escort him." Yogiri's expression didn't change. "I asked you not to." The woman opened her mouth to respond. She stopped, not because she chose to, because something fundamental about her ability to continue existing had been removed from the equation. Her eyes went blank. Her magic dissolved, and she fell boneless to the floor. The other hunters froze. Jin Woo felt it then. Not mana, not power in any sense he recognized. Just the absence of something that should have been there. Like a thread had been cut, and the woman's connection to the world had simply ended. "What did you do?" The team leader's voice cracked. Yogiri looked at him with that same detached expression. "She was attacking me. I stopped her." Another hunter lunged forward, weapon raised. He made it 2 steps. Then there was nothing where he had been. Not dead, not collapsed. Just gone as if his existence had been edited out of the scene. One moment he was moving the next. There was empty space where he'd been. The remaining 3 hunters scrambled backward. One tried to activate a defensive skill. One reached for a communication device. One just ran. None of them made it to the gate. The corridor was empty except for Jin Woo and Yogiri. Jin Woo's hand had moved to his dagger without conscious thought. But he didn't draw it. Because he understood in that moment that drawing a weapon would be the last decision he ever made. Yogiri remained where he was. Still had his hands in his pockets. Still looked like this was an inconvenience, not a crisis. "I don't want trouble," he said. "I just want to go home." Jin Woo's radio was screaming. Go Gun Hee's voice demanding status, demanding confirmation, demanding anything. He ignored it. "What are you?" Jin Woo asked. Yogiri thought about it for a moment. "I don't know, but I'm tired of being somewhere I don't belong." Outside the gate, alarms were starting to sound. The command unit's sensors were probably going haywire. Hunters would be mobilizing. The association would be making decisions. But inside the corridor, Jin Woo didn't move and looked at a high school student who had just erased 5 A-rank hunters without moving, without effort, without even seeming to care. And he realized that Go Gun Hee had been exactly right. This wasn't a threat they could fight. This was something else entirely. The first hunter to report the glitch was a C rank raiding a dungeon in Busan. His skill activated normally. Fire erupted from his palm, hit the target, and then flickered. Just for a moment. Like a light bulb on the verge of burning out. The monster died anyway, but the hunter's team spent the next 10 minutes arguing about whether they'd actually seen it happen. By midnight, 16 more incidents had been logged across South Korea. Skills misfiring, buffs dropping mid-combat, healing spells that took 3 attempts to trigger. Nothing catastrophic, nothing that got anyone killed. But enough to make the association's emergency line light up with reports from confused raid teams who couldn't explain what was wrong. Go. Gun Hee sat in his office at 0214, reading through incident summaries that all said the same thing in different words. The system they'd built their entire society on was stuttering. His phone buzzed. A message from the monitoring division. Gate classification changes detected. Multiple instances. Pattern suggests systemic anomaly. He called the division head directly. She answered on the first ring. "Talk to me," Go Gun Hee said. "Sir, we're tracking 23 gates that have shifted classification in the last 4 hours. D rank to C rank, B rank dropping to D rank, 1 A rank that briefly registered as unclassified before settling back. Settling back. You mean they're correcting?" "No, sir. They're oscillating. Like something's interfering with the baseline mana flow." She paused. "And they're all within a 15-kilometer radius of the Gangnam incident." Go Gun Hee closed his eyes. "How many people know about this?" "Just the night shift. I kept it contained like you asked." "Good. Keep it that way. I want hourly updates. If anything escalates, call me immediately." He ended the call and pulled up the surveillance feed from the Gangnam perimeter. The red gate hung there in the dark, stable and silent. Inside, nothing had changed. The passage remained vacant. Jin Woo had exited 3 hours ago with a shell-shocked expression and a request to speak privately. The conversation had been brief. 5 A-rank hunters went in against protocol, Jin Woo had said. They're gone, not dead. Gone. And the kid inside didn't even seem to care. Go Gun Hee had asked the obvious question. "Can we contain him?" Jin Woo's answer had been immediate. No. Now Go Gun-hee stared at the feed and wondered how long they could keep pretending this was manageable. The association ran on the illusion of control. Gates were dangerous but predictable. Hunters died, but the system worked. People accepted the risks because they believed someone was keeping track. What happened when the tracks started disappearing? His phone rang again. Different number. Private line. This is Gun-hee. We need to talk about Seoul. The voice belonged to Thomas Andre, the strongest hunter in America, and someone who didn't call unless the situation was already critical. My guild's sensors are picking up mana disruptions on a scale I've never seen. Centered on your location. It's being handled. By who? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like your entire grid is destabilizing. Go Gun-hee kept his voice level. What makes you think it's connected to Seoul? Because every major guild in the world is watching their instruments spike whenever your anomaly does something. Whatever you found, it's broadcasting. We're monitoring the situation. Monitoring. Thomas let out a short laugh. Right. Well, when monitoring stops working, give me a call. We'll talk about evacuation protocols. The line went dead. Go Gun-hee set the phone down and pulled up the global mana network map. Normally, it showed steady flows, predictable patterns, the kind of stable infrastructure that let people sleep at night. Now it showed irregularities, small ones, barely noticeable unless you knew what to look for. But they were spreading. Across the city, Jin Woo sat on the roof of his apartment building and tried to make sense of what he'd witnessed. The corridor had been wrong in ways he couldn't articulate. Not hostile, not dangerous in the traditional sense. Just fundamentally disconnected from the rules everything else followed. And Yogiri Takatou had occupied that space with the casual indifference of someone waiting for a train that was running late. 5 hunters had died because they'd treated him like a threat. Jin Woo called his shadows. They rose from the darkness around him, formless and patient. Beru materialized, first massive and attentive. My king, the entity we encountered today, Jin Woo said. What did you sense from him? Beru's mandibles clicked softly. Nothing, my king. And that absence was more terrifying than any presence I have faced. Explain. When we observe a powerful being, we perceive the weight of their existence, their mana, their intent, the space they occupy. This one had none of those markers. It was as if he barely registered as real. Beru shifted an unusual nervousness in the movement. But when he acted, reality itself agreed with him. No resistance, no struggle, just immediate compliance. Jin Woo thought about the woman who'd tried to restrain Yogiri, the way she'd simply stopped. Not violently, not dramatically. She'd just reached the end of a sentence that the universe refused to finish. Could we fight him? Jin Woo asked. No, my king. One does not fight an ending. One can only hope to avoid it. Jin Woo dismissed the shadows and sat in silence. Around him, Seoul pulsed with its usual nighttime energy. Millions of people sleeping, working, living their lives, completely unaware that something fundamental had shifted. That the framework holding everything together had developed cracks. His phone vibrated. A text from Cha Hae-in. Felt something strange during my raid tonight. Skills delayed. Others reporting similar. Know anything? He typed back, system-wide issue. Association is investigating. Her response came immediately. Is it related to Gangnam? Jin Woo hesitated, then replied, possibly. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally, should I be worried? He thought about Yogiri's expression when the hunters had died. That complete lack of malice. That exhausted patience. That quiet statement, I just want to go home. Not a threat, not a monster, just someone who didn't belong here and whose mere presence was enough to make the world remember. It had rules it couldn't enforce against him. Jin Woo typed, stay alert, but don't engage anything unusual without clearing it with me first. He pocketed the phone and turned his attention back to the city. Somewhere out there in that impossible corridor, a high school student sat and waited. For what Jin Woo couldn't guess. To leave. for someone to help him, for the world to stop bothering him. And every hour he waited, the cracks spread a little further. In the command center, technicians tracked the newest anomaly. A blue gate in Incheon had turned violet for exactly 43 seconds. The hunters inside reported the dungeon layout had inverted walls becoming floors, gravity reversing and then snapping back to normal so quickly they'd thought they'd imagined it. A raid team in Gwangju found themselves unable to leave a cleared dungeon for 6 minutes. The exit portals simply refused to acknowledge them. Then it worked perfectly, as if nothing had happened. And in Daegu, a gate that had been dormant for 8 months, suddenly activated, vomited out a dozen low-level monsters, and closed itself before anyone could respond. The association's official statement blamed equipment malfunctions. Social media blamed the association. And hunters, the ones who actually went into the dungeons and felt the wrongness firsthand, started talking quietly about retirement. Go Gun-hee authorized a media blackout and tripled the perimeter around Gangnam. No one in, no one out. The official story shifted to gas leak investigation. At 0430, he received word that the Japanese Hunter Association had reached out through diplomatic channels requesting information about unusual mana patterns originating from Seoul. At 0515, the Chinese Guild Coalition sent a similar inquiry. At 0600, the European Hunter Alliance filed an official concern through the UN. Whatever was happening in that corridor, the world had noticed. Go Gun-hee stood at his office window and watched the sun rise over a city that didn't know how close it was to something it couldn't comprehend. He'd spent his entire career preparing for catastrophes. S-rank gates, dungeon breaks, boss-level monsters. He'd never prepared for this. The quiet unraveling of everything they'd built, caused by one tired student who just wanted to leave. His phone buzzed one more time. Jin Woo. I'm going back in to talk to him. We need to find out what he needs to go home. Go Gun-hee read the message twice. Then he replied, agreed. But Jin Woo, if he asks you to help him leave, and you have any way to make it happen, do it. Whatever it costs. The response came quickly, understood. Go Gun-hee set the phone down and turned back to the window. The city woke. Traffic began. People started their day. And beneath it all, the framework holding their world together continued to crack. All because someone who didn't belong was still here and wanted to go home. Jin Woo entered the breach at dawn. The transition hit him the same way it had before. Temperature drop, sound dampening, the sense of crossing into a space that operated under different assumptions than the world outside. He paused just past the threshold, letting his senses adjust. The passage stretched ahead, unchanged. Featureless walls, sourceless light. And at the far end, Yogiri Takatou, exactly where he'd been hours ago. Jin Woo walked forward. His footsteps made almost no noise absorbed by whatever material composed the floor. He'd brought no weapons this time. No shadows ready to deploy, just himself and a question he needed answered. Yogiri noticed him when he was halfway down the hall. The kid's attention drifted over that same detached acknowledgement from before. You came back, Yogiri said. I said I would help you. Jin Woo stopped a respectful distance away. But I need to understand what's happening. Your presence here is causing problems outside. I'm not doing anything, I know. But the world is reacting to you anyway. Jin Woo chose his words carefully. Skills are failing. Gates are destabilizing. It's spreading beyond Seoul now. Other countries are noticing. Yogiri processed this with the same mild interest he'd shown everything else. That's not my fault. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying we need to get you home before it gets worse. I don't know how. Jin Woo studied him. The kid genuinely seemed unbothered by the chaos his existence was causing. Not callous, not cruel, just fundamentally disconnected from the consequences. Like he existed on a different frequency than everyone else. Where is home? Jin Woo asked. Not here, not this world. You're from another dimension. Yogiri shrugged. Maybe. Things like this happen sometimes. Gates, portals, I end up somewhere I shouldn't be. And you can't just leave. Usually I can. This time feels different. For the first time, something that might have been frustration crossed Yogiri's expression. Like something's holding me here. Jin Woo felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. What do you mean holding you? Before Yogiri could answer, the air in the passage changed. It wasn't dramatic. No explosion of force. No visible distortion. Just a subtle shift in pressure, like the moment before a storm breaks. Jin Woo's instincts screamed at him to move, but he held position. A figure materialized 20 meters behind Yogiri, not walked in, not phased through walls. Simply became present as if it had always been there, and Jin Woo had only just noticed. The shape was humanoid, but wrong in ways Jin Woo couldn't immediately categorize. Too tall. Proportions slightly off. Skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. And the feeling radiating from it was unmistakable. Monarch, not one of the major ones. This was a scout. A messenger sent to investigate the anomaly. But even a lesser monarch carried enough power to level city blocks, and this one had bypassed every ward and detection spell the association had in place. It spoke. The sound came from everywhere at once, reverberating in Jin Woo's bones. Interesting, a human who touches shadow standing beside something that should not exist. Jin Woo's hand moved to his inventory, ready to summon weapons. This isn't your concern. Leave. Everything is our concern, human. Especially anomalies that disrupt the natural order. The monarch's attention shifted to Yogiri. You. What are you? Yogiri turned around slowly. He examined the monarch with the same detached curiosity he'd shown Jin Woo. Busy. That is not an answer. It's the only one you need. The monarch moved. Not an attack. Just a step forward, closing distance. But the air rippled with killing intent so dense that Jin Woo felt it like physical pressure. This was a creature that had ended civilizations. That existed to destroy, and it was treating Yogiri like prey. I will ask once more, the monarch said. What are you? Answer, or I will extract the information from your remains. Yogiri sighed. The sound was so quiet that Jin Woo barely heard it. Just a small exhale of annoyance. Please don't, Yogiri said. The monarch laughed. The noise filled the passage, echoing off walls that suddenly seemed too close. You ask me not to harm you? How amusing. I have crushed gods who begged more convincingly than... It stopped, not because it chose to, because the sentence simply ran out of future to continue into. The monarch froze mid-syllable expression, locked in predatory confidence that would never change. Then its presence withdrew from the moment. No violence, no struggle, no final moment of realization. The monarch had been there, and now it wasn't. Not dead in any conventional sense, just removed from the sequence of events as if the universe had decided it no longer belonged in this timeline. The passage was quiet again. Jin Woo stared at the empty space where the monarch had been. His mind struggled to process what he'd witnessed. He'd fought monarchs before, knew their resilience, knew the sheer amount of power required to even slow them down. Yogiri had erased one with a sigh and 2 words. That's going to make things worse, isn't it? Yogiri said. It wasn't a question. Jin Woo found his voice. Yes, they'll send more. Probably. Yogiri turned back around, that same weary expression settling over his features again. I didn't want this. I just want to go home. Jin Woo believed him. That was the disturbing part. This kid wasn't a weapon, wasn't a monster, wasn't even particularly aggressive. He was just someone who existed in a way that reality couldn't reconcile, and his self-defense instinct operated on a level that made conventional power hierarchies meaningless. The thing holding you here, Jin Woo said carefully. Can you feel it? Yogiri closed his eyes. For a moment he was very still. When he opened them again, there was something different in his expression. Recognition. There are layers, he said, like locks or seals. 3 of them. Seals? Jin Woo felt his pulse quicken. Put there by someone, maybe. Or maybe they formed naturally, like reality trying to keep me contained. Yogiri paused. They're strong, but they're not perfect. They crack when I use too much. Use too much of what? Yogiri didn't answer directly. If I break them, things will get worse before they get better. Jin Woo thought about the mana disruptions, the failing skills, the gates destabilizing. All of that was happening with the seals in place. What would happen when they broke? How much worse, he asked. I don't know. But the world is already having trouble processing me. If the seals break completely... Yogiri trailed off. I don't think it would be good for anyone nearby. Jin Woo's radio crackled. Go! Gun Hee's voice came through urgent and strained. Jin Woo, we're reading massive mana spike. What happened in there? Jin Woo keyed the radio. Monarch Scout, it's handled. Handled. We're showing the entire grid just spiked across East Asia. Gates are shifting classification from Beijing to Tokyo. Jin Woo closed his eyes briefly. The removal of the Monarch had sent ripples across half a continent. Chairman, I need you to listen carefully. Whatever protocols we have for Monarch-level threats, activate them. And start planning evacuation routes out of Seoul. Silence on the other end. Then, that bad, potentially worse. The radio went quiet. Jin Woo turned back to Yogiri. The seals, he said. Can you control when they break, or will it just happen? I can hold them for a while, but every time I defend myself, they crack a little more. Yogiri met his gaze. If things keep attacking me, they'll break whether I want them to or not. Jin Woo understood. They were in a spiral. Yogiri's presence attracted threats. Threats forced him to defend himself. Defense damaged the seals. Damaged seals caused more disruption. More disruption attracted stronger threats. And at the end of that spiral was something no one was prepared for. Then we have 2 options, Jin Woo said. Find a way to get you home before the seals break completely, or find a way to stop things from attacking you. Which one do you think is more likely? Jin Woo thought about monarchs, about their nature, about how they responded to anomalies and power they didn't control, about how the stronger ones would inevitably come to investigate what had destroyed their scout. We're going to need help, he said. Yogiri nodded slowly. Okay. But if things attack me, I won't let them hurt me, even if it breaks everything. I know. The radio crackled again. This time it was an automated alert. High priority. All hunters to standby positions. Multiple gate anomalies detected. Pattern suggests coordinated response. Jin Woo listened to the alert finish, then pocketed the radio. Outside, the world was beginning to understand that something fundamental had changed. Inside this impossible space, a high school student sat down against the wall and closed his eyes, holding back forces he couldn't control and didn't want. And somewhere in the space between realities, the remaining seals continued to crack. The first breach opened in Gangbuk at 0917. A C-rank dungeon that had been stable for 6 months suddenly inverted its classification, jumped to B rank, and vomited monsters into a residential street. Goblins poured through the rift, followed by ogres, followed by something that the initial response team couldn't identify before it tore through their defensive line. The second breach came 8 minutes later in Yoido, then Mapo, then Gwangjin. By Tenhoju's Seoul had 12 active dungeon breaks across 6 districts. Go! Gun Hee watched the tactical display from the command center, each red marker representing a crisis that would normally take hours to contain. His phone hadn't stopped ringing. Ministers demanding explanations. Guild leaders requesting deployment orders. International observers asking pointed questions he couldn't answer. Civilian status, he asked. The operations officer didn't look up from her screen. Evacuation protocols active in all affected zones. We're moving approximately 40,000 people per hour, not fast enough. Hunter deployment. Every available team is engaged. We're pulling B ranks from training rotations. A ranks are spread across primary breach sites. She paused. Sir, we're running out of personnel. If this continues, I know. Go Gun-hee keyed the priority channel. All guild leaders, this is Chairman Go. Authorization granted for emergency conscription. Pull every licensed hunter off standby. No exceptions. He switched channels. Hunter Sung, what's your status? Static, then Jin Woo's voice came through. En route to Gangnam perimeter. I'm moving Yogiri Takatou to a less populated area. Negative. We need you on the front lines. The front lines are there because he's here. Moving him might reduce the attraction. Go Gun-hee processed that. You're saying the breaches are targeting his location. I'm saying they started 30 minutes after the Monarch scout disappeared. You do the math. Go. Gun-hee closed his eyes briefly. How bad will it get? Worse than this. The line went quiet. Go Gun-hee turned back to the display and watched Seoul burn. Jin Woo reached the Gangnam perimeter in under 6 minutes. The area had transformed since dawn. What had been a standard containment zone now resembled a military fortress. Barricades reinforced with mana shields, hunter teams in formation, artillery mages on elevated positions, and, at the center, the breach where Yogiri waited. Jin Woo bypassed the checkpoints and entered the passage. Yogiri was exactly where he'd left him, settled against the wall with that same expression of patient resignation. We're leaving, Jin Woo said. Now, Yogiri didn't argue. He simply rose and followed. They exited into chaos. The perimeter was under assault, not from the breach itself, but from the surrounding area. Monsters that had no business being in Seoul were converging on the location drawn by something they couldn't ignore. Jin Woo raised his hand. Shadows erupted from the ground. Igris emerged first armored and ready. Then Baru mandibles clicking. Then Iron Tank Jaima. The shadow soldiers manifested in a wave of darkness that swept outward, creating a protective circle around Jin Woo and Yogiri. Clear a path east, Jin Woo commanded. Non-lethal containment priority. We're moving through civilian zones. The shadows surged forward. Monsters met them and fell back overwhelmed by coordinated strikes that dismantled formations without creating the kind of carnage that would traumatize bystanders. Jin Woo had done this enough times to know how to fight clean. But something was wrong. Igris's blade flickered mid-swing, just for a fraction of a second, like a video buffering. The Shadow Knight recovered and completed the strike, but Jin Woo saw it happen. Then, Baru hesitated. A pause that shouldn't exist, like he'd forgotten his next command. It lasted maybe half a second before the shadow soldier resumed his assault. But that gap had been there. Jin Woo felt it through the connection. The mana binding his shadows to this reality was wavering. Not failing. Not yet. But unstable in ways it had never been before. Move faster, he said. Something's interfering. They pushed through the fighting shadows, carving a path, while Jin Woo kept Yogiri in the center of a protective formation. The kid said nothing, just followed with that same detached compliance. 3 blocks from the perimeter, they hit resistance. The creatures weren't from any dungeon Jin Woo recognized. Humanoid, but wrong skin that absorbed light proportions that suggested they'd been designed rather than evolved. They moved with predatory intelligence, ignoring the surrounding chaos to focus exclusively on Yogiri. Monarch minions. Defensive formation, Jin Woo ordered. The shadows responded instantly, creating a barrier of armored bodies. The minions struck. Claws met shadow-forged steel. The impact sent shockwaves through the street, shattering windows, cracking pavement. Jin Woo drew his daggers and joined the fight. The first minion lunged at him. He sidestepped, blade cutting across its torso. Black ichor sprayed. The creature screamed and retreated, only to be replaced by 3 more. They were testing him. probing for weaknesses. This wasn't a hunt. It was reconnaissance. Behind him, Yogiri spoke quietly. "They're not here for you." Jin Woo parried a strike that would have taken his head off. "I know. I can stop them." "Not yet." Jin Woo activated Shadow Exchange, swapping positions with Igris to flank a minion that had broken through the line. His dagger found its spine. The creature dissolved into shadow stuff that evaporated in seconds. "We hold until we're clear of civilians." More minions emerged from side streets, from rooftops, from sewers. The Monarchs weren't sending their elites, not yet. But they were sending enough to overwhelm through sheer numbers. Jin Woo felt his shadows faltering. Igris's movements lagged by microseconds. Baru's strikes lost precision. The mana disruption was getting worse, spreading from Yogiri like a field that made reality negotiable. A minion broke through the defensive line. It charged directly at Yogiri. The kid didn't move, didn't flinch. Just observed the creature with that same detached curiosity. The minion raised claws that could shred steel. "Loud, you," Yogiri said. The creature ceased mid-motion, not stopped, not frozen. Simply erased from the sequence of events, removed so completely that Jin Woo's eyes had trouble tracking where it had been. One moment a deadly threat. The next moment, nothing. The other minions hesitated. Some ancient survival instinct recognizing that continuing forward meant termination. Jin Woo used the pause. "Shadow's extraction pattern alpha. We're moving now." They ran. The Shadow Army created a moving fortress, walls of darkness that shifted and reformed as they sprinted through streets that had become battlegrounds. Behind them, the minions regrouped and pursued, but they moved more cautiously now. They'd seen what happened to things that got too close. Jin Woo's radio erupted with reports. Breaches expanding across the city, hunter casualties mounting, skills failing at critical moments. The association's carefully maintained infrastructure was collapsing under pressure it had never been designed to handle. And through it all, the mana disruption spread. A wave centered on Yogiri that made the entire hunter system unstable. They reached an industrial zone on Seoul's eastern edge. Empty warehouses, minimal civilian presence. Jin Woo called a halt inside a facility large enough to give them room to maneuver. "Here," he said. "We make our stand here." Yogiri scanned the space, then settled against a support pillar. "This won't stop them from coming." "I know, but it'll stop them from killing bystanders when they do." The shadows took defensive positions. Jin Woo activated his radio, about to update Go Gun-hee on their position. The air pressure changed. It happened all at once. Temperature spiking, oxygen thinning, a bass rumble that Jin Woo felt in his bones rather than heard. The feeling of reality being pushed aside to make room for something that took up more space than physics should allow. Baru dropped to one knee. "My king, the destroyer comes." Jin Woo knew that title. Every hunter who'd studied the Monarch hierarchy knew it. Antares, the Monarch of Destruction, the strongest of his kind. The creature that had ended armies, toppled nations, and treated gods as prey. The warehouse's north wall exploded inward, not a slow collapse, not a breach. The entire structure simply ceased to exist in that direction, vaporized by heat that turned steel to vapor and concrete to glass. What walked through the opening wasn't trying to make an entrance. It was simply too large for the space to contain. Antares filled Jin Woo's vision, scales like tectonic plates, wings that blotted out the sky, eyes that burned with an intensity that made staring into the sun seem comfortable. The Monarch moved with deliberate slowness, each step creating tremors that registered on seismographs across the city. When it spoke, Jin Woo's shadow soldiers flickered. Some of the weaker ones simply dispersed, unable to maintain coherence in the face of that voice. "Human, step aside." Jin Woo felt his hand tightening on his dagger. Every survival instinct screamed at him to run. This wasn't a fight he could win. This was annihilation wearing flesh. But behind him was Yogiri, a kid who just wanted to go home, who hadn't asked for any of this, who'd been nothing but cooperative despite being hunted. Jin Woo planted his feet and raised his blade. No. Antares tilted his massive head, something like amusement crossing those ancient features. You would die for that thing. I'd fight for anyone who hasn't done anything wrong. The monarch's laughter shook the building's remaining foundations. How noble. How pointless. His attention shifted past Jin Woo to Yogiri. I have felt you disturbing the order of this world. Explain yourself, or be unmade. Yogiri pushed away from the pillar. He walked forward, moving past Jin Woo to face Antares directly. The size difference was absurd. A high school student standing before a mountain that had taken the shape of destruction. I don't owe you an explanation, Yogiri said. Antares' amusement vanished. You dare. I don't want to fight you. I don't want to fight anyone. I just want to leave. Yogiri's voice carried no fear, no anger, just exhausted patience. But if you attack me, I'll stop you, the same way I stopped the others. Others? The word dripped contempt. You mean the messenger? The minions, lesser things unworthy of my concern. I am Antares. I have ended civilizations. I have slaughtered gods. What makes you believe you could? Antares lunged. The attack came faster than something that size should move. Claws that could shatter continents descended toward Yogiri with enough force to level the entire district. Jin Woo moved to intervene. He was too slow. The claws never landed. Antares froze. Not stopped mid-strike. Frozen. Completely immobile, caught in a moment that refused to end. His expression locked in predatory certainty, his massive form suspended in an attack that would never complete. Yogiri hadn't moved, hadn't raised a hand, hadn't said a word. He'd just decided the attack was over, and reality had agreed. Jin Woo stared at the frozen monarch. At the creature that represented the pinnacle of power in this world, turned into a statue by a kid who hadn't even bothered to lift his arms. He was loud, Yogiri said quietly. Then he turned to Jin Woo. I think one of the seals just cracked. The rulers perceived the anomaly from beyond the veil. It registered as wrongness. Not chaos. Not destruction. Something more fundamental. A presence that reality struggled to process like a word spoken in a language existence itself didn't recognize. They had watched the mortal realm for millennia, maintaining the balance, ensuring the war with the monarchs remained contained within acceptable parameters. They knew every variable, every force, every permutation of power that could threaten their carefully constructed order. This wasn't on any of their charts. The first indication came when Antares went silent. The monarch of destruction, the greatest weapon in the enemy's arsenal, simply ceased transmitting. Not dead. Not defeated in any conventional sense. Just removed from the equation. One of the rulers manifested in the space above Soul. Light coalesced into a form that suggested humanity without truly adopting it. Radiant, otherworldly, a being of pure authority given temporary shape. It surveyed the city below. The devastation was significant, but manageable. Dungeon breaks, hunter casualties, infrastructure damage, all within projected parameters for a monarch assault. But the mana field was wrong. It rippled like disturbed water, refusing to settle into stable patterns. Gates throughout the region oscillated between classifications. The entire system that governed how power flowed through this world was stuttering. And at the center of it all, in that impossible passage, was the source. The ruler descended. It bypassed the association's perimeter without effort, moving through space the way light passes through glass. The breach opened before it recognizing authority, yielding to a presence that outranked any mortal construction. The passage stretched ahead, featureless, wrong. A space that shouldn't exist carved from reality like a pocket of absence. And at the far end, two figures. The Shadow Monarch. The human who'd somehow inherited power, meant for something greater. The ruler had noted his development with interest. A useful tool, potentially. A variable that could tip the balance when the final war came. And beside him, the anomaly. The ruler's perception focused on Yogiri Takatou. For a moment, its certainty wavered. The being before it registered as mortal human, insignificant in the grand scope of cosmic forces. But underneath that surface impression was something else. Layers, seals, barriers containing something that made the ruler's ancient awareness recoil instinctively. This was not a human. This was an endpoint wearing a human face. The ruler spoke, and its voice carried the weight of divine mandate. Shadow Monarch, step aside. This entity is beyond your jurisdiction. Jin Woo didn't move. No, you do not understand what you protect. This being threatens the fundamental order of reality. It must be contained. It's a kid who wants to go home. That's not a threat. The ruler's attention never left Yogiri. You see a child. We perceive the truth. This entity has already disrupted the mana field across 3 continents. Gates are failing. The system we established to protect this world is collapsing. If allowed to continue, it will unravel everything. Yogiri spoke for the first time. His voice held no reverence, no fear, just that same exhausted patience. I didn't ask to be here. That is irrelevant. Your presence alone causes damage. You must be sealed completely until we can determine how to return you to wherever you originated. You can't seal me. The ruler's form brightened, radiance increasing. We are the rulers of the fragmentary world. We command authority over reality itself. We have contained cosmic horrors and bound primordial forces. What makes you believe you are beyond our reach? Yogiri met its luminous gaze with ordinary brown vision that somehow felt more real than the ruler's divine radiance. Because I don't follow your rules. The ruler reached out. It didn't physically move. Authority simply extended a decree written into the fabric of existence. The command was absolute. Be contained. Be limited. Be bound by laws that govern all things. Reality bent to accommodate the ruler's will. Space warped. Time slowed. The very concept of freedom contracted around Yogiri like an invisible cage. For one eternal instant, the ruler felt success. The anomaly was being defined, classified, brought under control. Then Yogiri sighed. The authority shattered, not resisted, not overcome. The ruler's decree simply ceased to have meaning. Like trying to enforce traffic laws on a mountain. The concept of control slid off Yogiri's existence without finding purchase. The ruler recoiled. Impossible. Our authority is absolute. Nothing in this reality can... I'm not from this reality, Yogiri said. And I didn't give you permission to touch me. Another ruler materialized beside the first. Then a third. They recognized the threat now. A being that operated outside the framework they'd spent eons constructing. A variable that couldn't be controlled. This escalates beyond acceptable parameters, the second ruler announced. We invoke protocol terminus. The anomaly must be eliminated. Jin Woo moved to intervene. Wait. Shadow Monarch, your cooperation has been noted. Stand down. This is no longer a mortal concern. The 3 rulers combined their authority. The passage flooded with light so intense that Jin Woo's shadows began to dissolve. This wasn't an attack. It was an erasure. A cosmic delete command meant to remove the anomaly from existence entirely. The light consumed everything. The passage, the floor, the air. Reality itself compressed under the weight of 3 divine wills working in concert to unmake a single target. When the radiance faded, Yogiri remained, unchanged, unharmed, standing in the exact same position with that same expression of mild annoyance. "That was rude," he said. The first ruler's certainty cracked. They had just deployed enough power to obliterate a continent, to erase a monarch from existence, to rewrite the fundamental laws of a dimension. And this human teenager was annoyed. "Impossible," the third ruler whispered. "What are you—" Yogiri considered the question. "Busy. And getting more annoyed every time something tries to kill me." Jin Woo felt it then. The shift in atmosphere. One of the seals inside Yogiri had just sustained more damage. Not broken, not yet, but closer to failure than before. "You need to leave," Jin Woo said to the rulers. "Now, before this gets worse. We cannot permit this anomaly to remain unchecked. It threatens everything we have built." "You threatened him first. And every time you attack, you damage the barriers holding him back." Jin Woo's voice carried an edge he rarely used. "Do you understand what that means? He's not trying to destroy your system. But if you force him to defend himself enough times, he will. Not because he wants to, because you won't leave him alone." The rulers processed this, their awareness expanding, analyzing, calculating. They perceived the seals now, the layers of containment that even they hadn't noticed at first. Barriers that weren't meant to protect reality from the anomaly. They were meant to protect the anomaly from reality. No, that wasn't quite right either. The seals were keeping something dormant, something that made the current disruption look like a minor fluctuation. And every time Yogiri defended himself, those seals cracked a little more. "You comprehend what you protect?" the first ruler asked Jin Woo. "If those barriers fail completely, I know, which is why you need to help me get him home instead of trying to kill him." The second ruler's form flickered. "We do not know where home is for this entity. Our authority does not extend to other realities." "Then find someone who does know. Make a deal with the monarchs. Open every gate in the world if you have to. But do something besides attacking him." The three rulers conferred without words, communication flowing at speeds mortal minds couldn't process. They calculated outcomes, projected scenarios, weighed the cost of cooperation against the risk of continued conflict. The anomaly had already proven their authority was meaningless against it. Continued assault would only accelerate whatever was being held back by those weakening seals. And if those barriers failed entirely, they couldn't model what would happen. Their predictive capabilities simply returned error messages when they tried to calculate an outcome. That alone told them everything they needed to know. "We withdraw," the first ruler announced. "But understand, Shadow Monarch, you have assumed responsibility for this entity. If it causes further damage, we will hold you accountable." "Fine, just stop attacking him." The rulers began to fade, their forms dissolving back into pure light. But the third one paused its attention, fixed on Yogiri. "One question," it said. "What happens if the seals break completely?" Yogiri's expression didn't change. "I don't know. But you probably don't want to find out." The ruler disappeared. The passage fell into stillness. The oppressive weight of divine presence lifted, leaving only Jin Woo and Yogiri in that impossible space. Jin Woo let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That could have gone worse. "They'll come back," Yogiri said. "Or send something else. Things always do, maybe. But we bought time." Jin Woo activated his radio. "Chairman, the ruler's situation is resolved. We need to convene an emergency meeting. Every major guild, every nation with a hunter association. If we're going to find a way to send Yogiri home, we'll need resources beyond what Soul can provide." "Go!" Gunhee's voice crackled back, strained but steady. "Agreed. I'll start making calls. How bad is it?" Jin Woo glanced at Yogiri. The kid had settled back against the wall, that patient resignation returning to his features. Waiting. Always waiting. "Bad enough that the rulers backed down," Jin Woo said. That should tell you everything you need to know." The radio went silent for a long moment. Then, "Understood. I'll prioritize the international channels." "Jin Woo, what are we actually dealing with here?" Jin Woo thought about the seals, about the ruler's failed authority, about Antares frozen mid-attack by a sigh and 2 words. "Something that exists outside the rules we think govern reality," he said. "And the longer it stays here, the more those rules break down." He ended the transmission and turned back to Yogiri. "When the seals break, will you be able to control what happens?" Yogiri was quiet for a moment. Then he shook his head. "I don't think so. That's why they're there. To keep me from ending things I don't mean to end. Then we find you a way home before that happens. And if you can't..." Jin Woo met his gaze. Brown eyes that held no malice, no desire for destruction. Just a tired acceptance of a situation neither of them had asked for. "Then I'll make sure you're far enough away from population centers that the damage is minimized," Jin Woo said. "It's the best I can offer." Yogiri nodded slowly. "That's better than most people would do." Outside, Seoul continued to recover from the assault. Hunters tended to wounded. Engineers assessed structural damage. The association spun its carefully crafted narrative to keep the public calm. And somewhere beyond the veil, the rulers regrouped and began calculations for a problem that couldn't be solved by authority alone. The seals held. For now, the emergency conference call included 43 nations. Go. Gun-hee sat in the command center, surrounded by screens showing faces from every major hunter association on the planet. Tokyo, Washington, Berlin, Cairo, Beijing, Moscow. Voices overlapped in a dozen languages, translators struggling to keep pace. "Cannot continue to shoulder this burden alone." "This is far enough," Jin Woo said. "If the worst happens, there's no one here to hurt." Yogiri settled onto a boulder and let out a breath. "Thank you. Most people would have just tried to kill me. Most people don't understand what you are. They just see the threat." Thomas Andre's voice cut through the chaos. "Enough. Chairman Go, what do you need?" "Resources to open cross-dimensional passages. Every guild with spatial manipulation capabilities. Every artifact that's ever shown properties beyond standard mana classification." Yogiri smiled faintly. "I like that. Bad luck. Better than being a monster. To send the anomaly home before..." The monitors flickered, all of them, simultaneously. For just a fraction of a second, every screen showing the conference call went dark. Then the alarms started, not just in Seoul. Across the world, emergency systems triggered in a cascade that spread faster than human reaction time. Tokyo's network, New York's grid, London's sensors. Every hunter association's monitoring equipment screamed the same message. Critical mana spike detected. Origin Seoul. Classification unknown. Threat level catastrophic. Go Gun-hee was already moving. All personnel evacuation protocol maximum. Clear the Gangnam perimeter to 5 kilometers. This is not a drill. He switched channels. Jin Woo report. Static. Then Jin Woo's voice strained. "The seal just broke. Get everyone out. Now." Jin Woo felt it the moment the third gate ruptured, not through his senses, through his shadows. Every soldier in his army recoiled simultaneously, their connection to him wavering like a signal being jammed by something that operated on a frequency reality wasn't designed to handle. The passage around him changed. The walls that had been featureless and stable began to fracture. Not physically. The structure remained intact. But the rules governing how the space existed started to unravel. Dimensions became negotiable. Up stopped being distinct from down. Distance lost meaning. Yogiri was on his knees, hands pressed against his temples. "I'm sorry, man," he said. His voice carried pain Jin Woo hadn't heard before. "I can't hold it anymore." "Don't apologize. Just tell me what happens next." "I don't know, but you should leave." Jin Woo planted his feet. "Not happening." The rupture spread. In Tokyo, a blue gate inverted. The dungeon inside turned itself outside out, spilling its interior into a shopping district. Hunters responded immediately, but their skills failed. Mana refused to flow properly. Warriors swung weapons that suddenly weighed nothing. Mages cast spells that fizzled or triggered randomly. In New York, every active dungeon simultaneously jumped 3 classification ranks. C rank became A rank. B rank became S rank. Response teams found themselves facing threats they had no preparation for, armed with powers that no longer functioned reliably. In Cairo, gates started closing, not the controlled shutdown of a cleared dungeon. They just ceased to exist, severing the connections between dimensions, without regard for anything caught between. Raid teams vanished. Monsters were bisected. The clean mathematical certainty that governed how portals worked became chaos. And across every continent, hunters felt their connection to mana destabilize. Some lost their abilities entirely. Years of training and development evaporating in seconds. Others found their powers amplified beyond control skills, triggering involuntarily, burning through their reserves in minutes. The system humanity had built its new civilization on was hemorrhaging. In Seoul, the passage Jin Woo occupied began to dissolve. The walls faded. The floor became translucent. He could see through it now, catching glimpses of other places, other times, other possibilities. The space was no longer a single location. It was becoming a junction point where multiple realities intersected. And at the center of it all, Yogiri Takatou struggled to contain something that shouldn't be contained. Jin Woo activated his radio one more time. "Chairman, if I don't make it out, you'll make it out. If I don't tell Cha Hae-in, I'm sorry I never took her to that restaurant she mentioned. Go." Gunhee's voice was steady despite everything. "Tell her yourself when this is over." The radio died. All electronics in the passage ceased functioning. Jin Woo was alone with his shadows and a high school student whose mere presence was tearing the world apart. Then Antares resumed. The Monarch of Destruction had been frozen for hours. A statue, a monument to the moment Jin Woo had witnessed Yogiri stop the unstoppable. But the third gate's rupture changed the rules. Whatever power had locked Antares in stasis dissolved along with everything else. The monarch's form thawed. Awareness returned. Those ancient terrible senses perceived the situation instantly. He understood what Yogiri was now. Not a human, not a monster, not even a god. Something that existed in the spaces between those categories. A fundamental endpoint that reality itself struggled to process. And in that moment of understanding, Antares made his choice. If this was the end, he would face it with the only thing he knew: destruction. The breath began to form. Heat flooded the passage. Not normal fire, not even magical flame. This was the essence of annihilation, given physical form. The air itself started to burn. Space warped around the gathering power. Jin Woo felt his skin blister from proximity alone. The breath of destruction wasn't just an attack. It was a concept. The idea of ending made manifest. Antares had used it to obliterate armies, level continents, reduce civilizations to ash and memory. And he was pouring everything he had into this final strike. Jin Woo moved to intervene. Drew his daggers, called his strongest shadows, prepared to throw himself between Yogiri and the attack. Too slow. The breath achieved critical mass. A sphere of concentrated annihilation, hanging in the air, growing, expanding, ready to consume everything within a kilometer radius. Antares spoke one word, a declaration, a curse, a final statement of existence. "Burn!" The breath launched. Yogiri raised his head. His expression was weary, pained, but also annoyed in that same fundamental way Jin Woo had seen when the A-rank hunters attacked. The look of someone who'd asked repeatedly to be left alone and was done being patient. "No," Yogiri said. The breath stopped, not blocked, not countered. It simply lost permission to continue existing. The concept of destruction found itself denied. The attack that had been forming gathering power, preparing to erase everything in its path, discovered that its future had been rescinded. Between one instant and the next, the breath ceased. No explosion, no dispersal of energy, no gradual fade. One moment it existed. The next moment, it had never been given the right to happen. The heat vanished. The warping space normalized. The air cooled to something breathable. Antares froze again. But this time it was different. This wasn't stasis. This was termination. The monarch of destruction had been removed from the sequence of events so thoroughly that even the memory of his presence seemed thin. Silence fell, not peaceful, terminal. Jin Woo became aware of his own heartbeat. His breathing. The shadows around him trembling with something that might have been fear if shadows could feel fear. Yogiri slumped against what remained of the passage wall. That was the last one. The last seal? No. The last time I can do that before they all break. Jin Woo felt his stomach drop. How long do we have? Hours? Maybe less. Yogiri met his gaze. Brown meeting black. Exhaustion meeting determination. You need to get me somewhere isolated, far from people. When the seals fail completely, I won't be able to control what ends. Jin Woo's radio crackled back to life. Go! Gun Hee's voice came through barely audible over the chaos of emergency broadcasts in the background. Jin Woo, the mana field is stabilizing. Gates are returning to normal classifications. What happened in there? Yogiri stopped Antares, permanently this time. At what cost? Jin Woo watched Yogiri struggle to remain conscious. Saw the effort it took for the kid to hold back whatever was straining against the last intact seal. The final barrier is failing. We have hours at most to find him a way home. If we can't... Jin Woo paused. Chairman, I need you to identify the most isolated location within our reach. Somewhere at least 100 kilometers from any population center. Go. Gun Hee was silent for a long moment. You're planning for the worst case. I'm planning to minimize casualties if we fail. Another pause. Then, there's an island, 200 kilometers off the southern coast, uninhabited. We use it for high-risk weapons testing. I can have a transport ready in 20 minutes. Make it 10. Jin Woo ended the call and turned to Yogiri. Can you move? I think so. Then let's go. We're not done trying to send you home. But if we run out of time, I'm making sure you're far enough away that innocent people don't pay for our failure. Yogiri managed a weak smile. You're nicer than most people I've met. I'm practical. And you've been nothing but cooperative despite everything we've put you through. Jin Woo offered his hand. Come on. We've still got time to find a solution. Yogiri took the hand and pulled himself upright. The passage around them had stabilized somewhat. Still wrong. Still barely holding together. But functional enough to walk through. They emerged into a soul transformed by crisis. The sky was wrong. Streaks of color that shouldn't exist painted across clouds. Gates hanging in the air flickered like dying light bulbs. Buildings showed stress fractures that hadn't been there an hour ago. And everywhere people were evacuating. Not in panic. In the organized efficiency of a population that had learned to live with catastrophe. They moved quickly, calmly, trusting that the hunters and the association knew what they were doing. Jin Woo hoped that trust wasn't misplaced. Go! Gun Hee was waiting at the transport. A military helicopter engine's already running. The international community is watching, he said. They want updates. They want explanations. They want someone to blame. Tell them we're working on it. And if we fail, Jin Woo helped Yogiri into the helicopter. Then tell them that we tried. And that the damage was minimized because we planned for failure instead of assuming success. Go Gun Hee nodded. Good luck, Jin Woo. The helicopter lifted off. Below, Seoul struggled to recover from a crisis it barely understood. Across the world, nations scrambled to adapt to a system that had proven itself fragile. And in the helicopter, a high school student closed his eyes and focused everything he had on holding back an ending that wanted to happen. The seals held, but everyone could hear them starting to splinter. The island was exactly as isolated as Go Gun-hee had promised. Rock and sparse vegetation. No structures except a weathered observation post. Ocean stretching to the horizon in every direction. The helicopter landed on a flat section of stone blades, whipping salt spray into the air.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and be sure to turn on notifications so you won't miss out future videos. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.